Hello and welcome to the big fight. So, Aam Aadmi Party versus the BJP, Narendra Modi versus Sonia Gandhi. Let's face it, there is only one real big fight that this nation really cares about right now. And that's going to be the match against Australia on the 26th, the semi-final of the World Cup. Building up to the final of the World Cup, is India going to be retaining the trophy or not? That, at the end of the day, is what counts. And I have an audience out here filled with little children, and perhaps I should put that question to them as well. Actually, I will in just a minute, but why don't I introduce the rest of the panel first? Thomas Carroll, great to have you with us. First Secretary of the Australian High Commission, also the captain of the Australian High Commission cricket team, I gather. So we're going to be getting you to tell us why you're going to allow India to win the World Cup, of course. In just a couple of minutes.
Thank you for having me, Vikram. It's a great pleasure.
Pradeep Magazine, Advisor Sports at the Hindustan Times, and Jason Koutsoukas, I hope I got that right.
You did?
Okay, a South Asia correspondent of the Sydney Morning Herald. So you will tell us, of course, about the conditions out there as well at the SCG. And it's great to have joining us Javagal Srinath, former Indian cricketer, current ICC match referee. Mr. Srinath, thanks so much for joining us. And Aftab Shivdasani, well-known actor joining us from Mumbai, also plays at the Celebrity Cricket League. So great to have you with us as well, Aftab. But let me now turn to the audience. So, who do you think is going to win the World Cup? India! Wow, I could have guessed that. Who's going to... Okay, so that obviously means that on the semi-final, India is going to win?
Yeah!
Okay, so I do have one Aussie. One brave Aussie. Is that what's going to be happening at the SCG?
I think Australia is going to win.
On
this may not get me a very good reaction. I think Australia will just beat India.
At the semi-final?
In the semi-final, yes.
By the way, is the audience going to be largely Australian or Indian? I wonder sometimes.
I think it'll probably be about 50-50, most likely. Vikram, I think there'll be a big Indian contingent, but I think there'll be a big Australian contingent too.
Okay, so all of you think India's going to win?
Yeah!
Why?
Because they was having a good lineup of batting and good bowling lineup also.
Okay. Mr. Carroll.
Look, I think there's no denying India, the power of the Indian team, but I think the depth of the Australian team is going to show the way on the day. The Australian batting has so many fantastic batsmen who can just take the game away in a very, very short space of time. I think Virat Kohli, he's the key. If Mitchell Johnson can get him out, then it's game on for the Australians.
Well, you know, Mr. Carroll, we have this saying in India, you know, Atiti Devo Bhava, which means, you know, a guest is like a god. You should look after your guest. You should be a really good host. So you really should think about this. You know, you're the hosts out there. You should allow the guests to win.
We'll
be a good sport.
It'll be a fair game. It will be a fair game. And as Steve pointed out, we'll give you the home crowd advantage almost. I mean, the sea of blue in the stadium is going to be amazing, like it was in Adelaide for the game against Pakistan. It'll be close, but I think Australia just has the edge.
Just has the edge. Javagal Srinath, on paper, Australia has a stronger team, but the stronger team doesn't always win.
I think it's a 50-50 chance. It's a semi-final. It's a do or die. It's already started, and you know, I think more or less well balanced both the sides. It all depends on who clicks on that day. We saw Australia struggled a bit to start with in their batting. That is something which Indian fast bowlers will be looking at. But I think in terms of batting, I would say India has the edge in terms of experience. I think Australian bowling will enjoy that extra bit of confidence than Indians. I think it will be a keen contest. I would definitely say 50-50 chance for either of the teams.
The Sydney pitch, is that going to play an important role? Because we did see, and look, it's approaching the end of the season now, that pitch could start to turn. And if it starts to turn, then you could well argue that India has better spinners.
Exactly. We are now probably, you know, almost at the fag end of the tournament itself. The wicket, so many games have been played on this pitch, so you know, there is a lot of rolling, and the wicket has gone a little flat, in my opinion. And it all depends on what kind of wicket the groundsman prepares. You know, if he gives a lush green wicket with a lot of watering, that might bring in the pacemen into the forefront. But I think I'm trying to understand, I don't know how they're going to go. I mean, what kind of wicket? I'm sure there will be a neutral perspective when it comes to preparing the wicket in Australia. I think turn could be the last option. I'm sure they would have rolled the wicket very well, and you know, seeing the pacemen in the Australian side, the groundsman might probably sway towards that and give a good grassy wicket and with a good bounce and carry.
Pradeep, at the end of the day, you could also argue that the Australian batting lineup has been put under pressure by quality pace, whether it was New Zealand, whether it was against Pakistan. Now, India, the Indian fast bowlers are actually done really well this time around.
Well, actually, the surprise of the tournament has been the Indian bowling. Because if anyone would have said that India are favourites to win the World Cup before it began, people would have laughed, because given the way they had performed.
India's not yet the favourites, but
I think they are.
I mean, as for the betting odds right
favorites.
now, to be fair, I mean, the betting odds are still saying Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. I mean, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa.
Look, I'm saying this in context of what happened before the tournament began. India was nowhere in the picture. Today they are in the picture. At least we are discussing and debating, and we giving them a chance which we didn't give them earlier. And it's purely to do with their intensity, which they didn't show before the tournament began, and to do with their bowling, which didn't appear to be there in the test matches in the tri-series. Having said this, I would still feel, being an Indian, I would say 50-50, though given the depth of Australia's batting. See, India has a very strong top order, but after 6-7, they just have nothing. So India will have to really fire big.
Mohammad Shami can bat a bit.
They can bat, but you don't have a Maxwell coming at that number, or a Franklin coming in at such late. Johnson can belt the ball. So they have such a strong batting lineup, which India needs to be worried about.
So why don't you tell us about the Sydney track? Is it going to turn? Because then that could change equations a bit.
Well, we're relying on the groundsman, of course, to prepare an ideal wicket for the Australian team. We hope he's definitely on our side, and I'd trust that he would prepare a pitch that favoured the Australian attack.
Which means what? Fast?
I would think so. I think Australia's got a strong pace attack, and that's definitely what would suit us best. As you say, I think India has better spinners, and we would be, I think, a bit more vulnerable to a track that favoured the spinners. But I think India it definitely has a chance to win this tournament. They've had a dream tournament so far. They've played way above expectations. Against Pakistan, they could easily have lost the match if the Pakistanis had held on to their catches, and I think that would give India a lot of hope. If they can put the pressure on early, get a couple of those early wickets, Australia is very, very vulnerable.
Aftab?
I think about 3 or 4 players have come up with a century for the first time in the World Cup. And whenever the other one has failed, there's one more player who's performed. You have the likes of Shikhar Dhawan, Rohit Sharma, Suresh Raina coming up with centuries. And just before the last match against Bangladesh, people actually almost wrote off Rohit Sharma, saying that he's not performed and stuff. And he came up to make a century in the quarterfinal and actually gave us the victory. So I don't completely agree that the Indian team is vulnerable at this point. I think they are a very, very well balanced and stable side. I think this side has the capability of going all the way and beating even the best, the so-called best, the Australians, who are a fantastically balanced side themselves. I don't see them being vulnerable. I see, in fact, them being one of the best sides ever.
Right. Mr. Sheeran, let me ask you that, throw that back at you.
I think it has been a collective effort from every department, be it the bowling or the batting. Just take the batting. I think Aftab said it right. If it is not Virat Kohli, then it is Shikhar Dhawan. If it is not him, then Raina. Otherwise, Dhoni comes in the end and chips in with some important runs. Now, look at the bowling side. I mean, all of a sudden, Shami finds his channel where to bowl. It's hitting the right areas consistently. That's exactly what these bowlers have done throughout. Yadav, who seemed to be a little erratic during the Australia series, I think he has now found his rhythm as well. Now, Mohit, I think he's been a dark horse, and not many people pinned hopes on him because Bhuvneshwar is sitting in the side. But I think he has proved to be a wonderful bowler. Now, it all comes from drawing confidence from one another amongst the bowling department. And once the batting starts doing well, there is a spillover on the bowling as well.
Mr. Karam, Indian fielding has now really come of age and is perhaps arguably as good, as the Australian fielding would be. And the bowling has really come up after the Test series and the Tri-series, and people were almost writing off the bowlers. They've really come together, and that's been one of the highlights.
They've really come together, and it's a different team than landed off the plane, late last year. They've certainly sort of reinvented themselves as the tournament's commenced.
That's actually interesting, but a long stay away from home, potentially a negative Test match series, India could have gone into the World Cup as a very jaded, beaten side. It could have gone wrong.
Well, that's what a lot of us thought. Even I thought so, because we had this example of '92 World Cup when India had gone there much before the World Cup. They were there for 3-4 months. It was not obviously as good a side as this is in a one-day format, but it was a jaded, tired team. A lot of us felt that it will act negatively, but it does seem that the modern era is such. Players don't get homesick so fast. The technology is such that the connection is so good. What could have been a minus is now seen as a positive because they have been acclimatized to those conditions so well. And they obviously must have been focused on the World Cup, that all of a sudden you see a new Indian team.
In the test matches, was there a feeling that India was more competitive than you may have expected given in like previous tours, or not so much?
It was a very competitive test match series. And I think India was unlucky not to win at least win one match. They could have easily won 2 matches, and I think they performed pretty well. Okay, the one-day series wasn't to India's advantage, but what has really impressed me with the way they've performed in the World Cup series is how composed the team is. They really have been performing well as a team, and that's very clear when you see them on the field. They seem to be really working as a cohesive unit, and I think they probably have the edge on Australia in terms of confidence. And the Australian selectors have been chopping and changing a bit. They've shown a bit of uncertainty in the lineup, and whereas the Indians have seemed to be a little bit more sure of their selections and sure of themselves as a team. And I think they've really played themselves into a winning position. And I think it's going to be a real challenge for India for Australia to overcome India on Thursday. The other thing that I would say is just what a big advantage the Indian crowd is in Australia. That's been one of the highlights of the tournament for me. It's one of the biggest crowds of the tournament. But this
time in Sydney it'll be matched because obviously you'll have the Australian crowd in. So
sure, but there's a lot of Indians.
It could be more 50-50, I guess.
Yeah, but as we saw with the Indian turnout for Narendra Modi's visit to Sydney last year, there's a huge Indian population in Sydney, a very enthusiastic one, and they'll be packing the grandstands and really giving that Indian team a lot of support. And I think we can't underestimate just how much of an advantage that will be for the Indian team.
Right. Mr. Srinath, first of all, your take on these 3-4 months that India has spent, and secondly, the entire question of momentum. 7 matches won, 7 times opposition bowled out. That sort of a thing, does it really start to kick in now? Or, on the other hand, would you say that the law of averages will kick in and you'll have a bad day?
Vikram, when you have almost 2.5 months of not so good cricket, I think somebody spoke about good test cricket. I think there was some intensity in the test cricket. ODIs, we were a little flat. But I think what can you expect when you have in World Cup? These guys have known everything. The conditions are good. Bowlers are bold enough on those trips. One thing is Dhoni didn't really bring in too many from outside. I mean, except for Mohit, I think he had the same players playing in the World Cup as well. Now, all of a sudden, it's a World Cup big event. You are just switched on. That's exactly what happened. And then to start with, it was Pakistan. Mind you, I think one man who has really played a big role is Mahendra Singh Dhoni behind the stumps. I think his captaincy has been superb. His bowling changes have been excellent. Some of the master moves which we need to speak about is sending Ajinkya Rahane against the South Africans instead of sending Raina. I mean, horses for courses. He has done wonderfully behind the stumps. He won the match. I think this man, he's the only man behind who has made this team go this further. I think a lot of, I would say, the best things are coming from him. 2 more games, let's wait and watch.
I just want to ask you now the basic question, though, of what is at stake in the semi-final, because it's a big match, India versus Australia, and then when you're taking a look ahead at the final, you could argue that the team which is then going to be coming inside, in a sense, India and Australia are perhaps the most acclimatized to playing in the MCG. So, does the semi-final almost decide who's going to be winning the World Cup itself?
I think it does. You pointed out how experienced the Indians are playing at the MCG. They've probably played more than a week of cricket there over the summer.
Whereas somebody like a New Zealand or a South Africa coming in would be, not that familiar. For New Zealand in particular, they're not used to those conditions.
No, that's right. And I think Australia will feel a lot more confidence against both of the other opposition than necessarily they will on Thursday night. So I think this is the big one, if we can get through here.
Semi-final, you think, is the big one?
It is a big one, but I won't rule out South Africa. I think South Africa,
It's a very good team.
On paper, perhaps it's the best team.
Yeah.
You just can't, if you have somebody like De Villiers, who is redefining batting the way Viv Richards did in the earlier era. He, I think, is Richards of our time. Then you have Amla. Then they have such fantastic two fast bowlers. Dale Steyn is the finest in the world. Mockle. And Tahir, surprisingly, is bowling really well. So I would say that whoever wins the semi-final, I think if South Africa beats New Zealand, because they are going to play New Zealand in their home conditions, final would, it won't be that easy for whichever team takes on them.
As things stand today, a bigger challenge you think in the semi-final?
Well, I mean, I think Pradeep is right. You can't ever write off South Africa. They've got such a strong team. But I think I think Australia, India are the two best teams at the moment, and I think the winner of that semi-final on Thursday will go on to win the tournament. Yes.
Mr. Srinath, you agree with that?
I think New Zealand. I would probably bring in New Zealand here. I think they are one of the strongest sides. The way they have played, the way they have demolished each and every opponent in the side. There's not much to take in terms of wickets playing in Australia, playing in New Zealand. Maybe a little bit of bounce, but I think the New Zealand team is well equipped. They're batting, they're bowling. The two left-armers. They are probably the best team with Vittori, doing the spinning job. I think there's some. If they come to see finals, they will be a very, very serious contenders.
But Mr. Srinath, I mean, the flip side of that, I guess, would be that, small grounds in New Zealand, sort of muscle memory that you might have, MCG much larger, batsmen, I mean, McCullum thinking he can hit it out of the park, but, MCG boundaries are a little further away.
You definitely regulate yourself depending upon the kind of conditions you are up with. If it is MCG, maybe you'll play more on the ground. But again, it has become so batting oriented, this tournament, or the ODI itself. You hit the ball beyond the 30-yard circle, it goes for a 4. So I think in terms of technique, they will not change much. In terms of strategy, New Zealand will not change much. They will be very aggressive. It has paid rich dividends so far with that aggression at the top order. They will continue with the same. And I think for me, in this tournament, of course, Indians bowlers have done well. But I think New Zealand bowlers are the real champions so far. They have demolished every other side, and they are probably the best attack I see so far.
All right, Aftab, let me get you in on that. Looking ahead to the final, you think the semi-finals at the end of the day hold the key?
Well, of course, they say a lot of times that usually the semi-finals are always more exciting than the finals, and I don't see a reason why not. Of course, the entire world has been waiting for this match, India versus Australia, and I'm sure a lot of people would have hoped that these two countries meet in the final. But nevertheless, I think both these countries are going to give it their best shot and obviously want to beat the other, because they also have been playing a lot of cricket against each other of late. So I'm sure they know each other really well, their strengths and weaknesses. But also don't forget, Vikram, this is the World Cup, like somebody said, and nobody is going to give anything less than 100%. But yes, there's a gentleman who said about South Africa, not to kind of take them lightly. I agree with that, because even the finals, if South Africa beats New Zealand, I don't think any of the teams, India or Australia, whoever actually wins in the semi-finals, is going to take that match lightly, because South Africa is a very, very strong team and they've never won the World Cup as far as my knowledge goes. So I think they're going to want to give it their all also. But any which way, yes, semi-finals is going to be an amazing game. And of course, my heart says India. Although you can never write off the Australians. I mean, they're one of the best sides, if not the best side in the world at the moment.